Let's do something the internet doesn't usually do with this character. Let's take his side and take it properly. Not the fun way, where we admire the chaos and call it genius, and every clip gets a metal soundtrack. I mean the boring way. We go through his actual decisions one at a time, and we check every single one against what the show puts on screen. You've seen these episodes, you can check us as we go. One rule before we start, because it matters for how we're doing this. A call only counts if the show itself confirms it. That means a scene in which the thing he predicted actually happens, or an enemy admitting out loud that he was right. Vibes don't count, and neither does our affection for the man talking. If the screen stays silent about a claim, we throw it out, even when we like it. And I'll be honest with you about why we need the rule. Daemon Targaryen is easy to overrate. He's magnetic and funny, the kind of presence that owns a room, and that charisma buys him forgiveness he hasn't earned. The rule is there to protect us from him. By that standard, most characters in this story score once, maybe twice across 3 seasons. We sat down and counted for Daemon. He scores 7 times. 7 confirmed calls, some of them about the biggest questions in the realm. And the strangest part, the thing that turned this from a list into a story, is what being right cost him every single time. So let's count them. We start small, with a city, because the wars only make sense once you've seen how he handles a city. Early in the first season, the capital is rotting and you can smell it through the screen. Crime in every alley of the poor quarters, and the council knows about it the way you know about a report. Numbers on parchment, read indoors. Far from the noise. Daemon commands the city watch at this point, which means that out of everyone at that polished table, he is the only man who has actually walked the streets he is being judged for. And judged he is. His raid on the criminal quarters was a public bloodbath. The council is furious, and honestly, some of that fury is deserved. But listen to how he answers, because he doesn't defend the brutality at all. He asks the room a question instead.
Do you want them mugged, raped, murdered?
And then he points at the room itself, which is the part I find genuinely fearless.
You mightn't know this unless you left the safety of the Red Keep.
It's his entire biography in 2 lines, and we're going to see it again and again. First, he states the problem nobody wants to hear out loud. Then he explains exactly why nobody wanted to hear it. Then comes the actual thesis, and notice how modest it sounds after all that blood.
Our city should be safe for all its people.
Who argues with that sentence? Nobody can. That's the trap he builds for the council. Once the sentence is spoken, you either agree with him, or you stand up and defend the crime rate. Corlys Velaryon, who is nobody's idea of a Daemon fan, backs him on the spot. And the king...
We installed Prince Daemon as commander to promote law and order.
After all the scolding, closes the meeting with permission rather than punishment. Enforce my laws, he says. The watch keeps its commander, and the commander keeps his methods. Now, our rule says we need the screen to confirm the call. So here it is. The gold cloaks. Watch any street scene in the capital for the next 3 seasons, and they're simply there. Organized, drilled, feared, a fact of the city. Like the walls. The institution he built in a few brutal months outlives his command. It outlives the king. It ends up fighting on both sides of the Civil War, which tells you it became bigger than the man who made it. He said the city could be made safe. Everyone rolled their eyes, and then it got safer. First entry in the ledger. And the price? Look at what the council remembers afterward. Not the streets, the spectacle, the heads on spikes, the performance of it. Hold on to that, because this pattern is going to follow us through the entire list. Now, the big one, the one everybody remembers, and I'd argue everybody remembers it wrong. Here's the setup. A pirate alliance called the Triarchy takes the Stepstones, the chain of rocks between Westeros and Essos. Every trade route in the Narrow Sea now runs through their hands, and their hands feed people to the crabs. The council's response is to discuss it. Season after season of the realm's finest minds, and their plan for the throat of the kingdom is to wait and see. Daemon doesn't wait. He takes a borrowed fleet, no crown support worth mentioning, and spends 3 years bleeding on those rocks. 3 years. The show is honest about how ugly it gets, and how close he comes to losing everything before the war finally turns his way, and he wins it.
Once we smash the Triarchy, they name me King of the Narrow Sea.
So he's a king now. He conquered the territory. His men crowned him. And no council in King's Landing can do anything about it. Remember, this is the man the whole realm calls a power-hungry menace, one bad morning away from stealing his brother's throne. Watch what he actually does with power when he finally has some. He flies home.
But I know that there is only one true king, Your Grace. My crown and the Stepstones are yours.
Walks into the throne room in front of the entire court, kneels, and hands the crown to his brother. The one thing nobody in this story ever does with a crown, and the supposed usurper does it first. And when his brother asks what the war left behind, the answer he gives isn't a boast so much as an accountant's report. Read off without a flicker.
The tides, the crabs, and 2,000 dead Triarchy corsairs staked to the sand to warn those who might follow.
Was he right about the Stepstones mattering? The show spends the next 2 decades of story saying yes. The narrow sea is the realm's throat, exactly as he treated it. Whoever holds those rocks decides what the kingdom eats and what its enemies dare. The crown will fight for them again and again, with more men and more dragons than Daemon ever had. Second entry. But this scene gives us something more important than an entry. It gives us the tragedy in miniature, and I want to make sure we see it now, early. Because what does the court remember from that day? Not the strategy, not the 2,000 corsairs, or the open shipping lanes. They remember that Daemon Targaryen crowned himself. The theater swallowed the victory whole. He handed the crown away within days of winning it, and the realm still talks about the man who wanted a crown. He won the war and lost the telling. Keep that trade in mind as we go, because we're about to watch him make the same trade at every scale the story offers him. Now the entry everybody uses against him. I'm not going to soften it, because it doesn't need softening so much as it needs actual reading. The king's newborn son dies. The succession, already shaky, is now an open wound. That same night Daemon drinks with his officers on the Street of Silk, and by morning Otto Hightower walks into the throne room with a report.
He toasted Prince Balon,
To the king's son.
styling him the heir for a day.
Before we judge the line, notice who is delivering it. The worst sentence of Daemon's life reaches the king, and reaches us through the one man in the realm who profits most from repeating it. 3 witnesses, Otto says. A celebration, he says. Maybe it happened exactly like that. Maybe it was a drunk man's bitter joke, sharpened into a dagger by the retelling. The show deliberately doesn't show us the toast. We only ever hear Otto's version. And the king believes it instantly.
Brother,
Did you say it?
we must all mourn in our own way, Your Grace.
Because it sounds like his brother. He doesn't deny it, stand in that room for a second. A denial costs him nothing, might even save him. And he shrugs instead. He would rather be exiled for honesty than kept around for a retraction. File that away, it's not the last time. But here's why this scene belongs on our list at all, and I know how this sounds. Strip the cruelty off the words and look at the claim underneath them. The succession is unsettled. The realm is going to bleed over it. In the entire first season, he is the only character who says this out loud. Everyone else prays the problem away for 20 years. The problem, meanwhile, grows teeth and wings. The show doesn't just confirm this call in some scene. The show is the confirmation. The entire war we watch is his ugly toast coming true, funeral by funeral. He was right in the worst possible way, at the worst possible moment, phrased to wound the one man who loved him, and he made himself easy to dismiss. Third entry, which is starting to look like the only kind of right he knows how to be. Same night, one more room. The brothers face each other. The king demands honesty, and for once in this story, somebody actually gives a king honesty.
I've only ever spoken the truth. I see Otto Hightower for what he is. A second son who stands to inherit nothing he doesn't seize for himself.
Look at that second sentence. That's not an insult. That's a profile. Ambition dressed as service. A man who arrived at court with nothing, attached himself to the crown's ear, and intends to leave holding the realm. Every word of it will come true on screen, and we will get to that. But first, the answer he earns in the moment.
Otto Hightower is a more honorable man than you could ever be.
Filed and forgotten. And if the show were simpler, that would be the whole entry. Right, unheard, punished, next. Except This is where the show does something patient, something I love it for. Years pass, and the person who reopens the case is not Daemon. It's Rhaenyra at her father's side, carrying the exact same thought in gentler wrapping. Same charge.
And what will you do about the vulture who perches upon your throne?
Self-interest at the king's ear, a high-tower queen in the king's bed, a grandson pointed at the throne. And this time the king hears it. He sits his hand down and says it to his face. And I want you to compare these words to Daemon's profile from years before.
How long did it take you to choose yourself over your king? Your interests no longer align with those of the realm. Your judgment has been compromised.
That is Daemon's assessment, almost word for word, spoken by the man who called it slander. The verdict was correct the entire time. It just could not be heard in his voice. Fourth entry, and now the ledger is telling us something bigger than any single call. The realm can accept the message. What it cannot accept is the messenger. Every truth this man tells has to be laundered through somebody else's mouth before it counts as truth. Think about what that does to a person, year after year. We're going to watch it do it. Let's pause the list for a moment, because 4 entries in, the shape of the thing is visible, and I want us to name it together before we go on. Every one of these calls follows the same 4 steps. Step 1, he sees the board earlier than anyone else. The city, the rocks, the succession, the hand. Step 2, he says it in the most abrasive way a human being could possibly choose. He needles, he mocks, he picks the exact phrasing that makes agreement feel like surrender. Step 3, the room rejects the message because of the messenger, usually within a single scene. Step 4 is the one that makes this show what it is. Reality arrives, years later, and proves the call. By then, somebody else usually collects the credit for it. Or worse, the disaster he warned about collects everyone. Now ask the question that actually matters here. Does he know? Is the abrasiveness a flaw he can't control, or is it a choice he keeps making because winning the argument feels better than being believed? Keep that question open while we watch the rest. I don't think the show answers it until the very last scene we'll look at. And when it answers hard. Before the list gets longer, let's turn the rule against him. A fair ledger has a column for the misses, and his are genuinely ugly. I'd rather we count them than pretend the column is empty. Same council scene as the Gold Cloaks, actually. He's still the only realist in the room when somebody needles him about his marriage, and the realist evaporates mid-sentence.
I think my bronze bitch is happier for my absence.
That's not strategy. That's a man burning his own marriage for a laugh, at a table where his enemies are taking notes. Nothing on screen ever vindicates him about Rhea Royce, because there was nothing to vindicate. Cruelty with good timing is still just cruelty, and the rule holds. No confirmation, no entry. Miss number 1. And the second season hands us the worst one. A grieving queen asks for vengeance for her murdered son, and what her husband actually sends into the enemy's castle is the thing everyone who watches this show remembers.
Did you send assassins to murder children in their beds?
I sent the Queen's vengeance for her.
He calls it vengeance. The show calls it a catastrophe and then spends a whole season proving it. The realm's sympathy swings to the enemy overnight, and his queen has to answer for a crime she never ordered. By our own rule, this is the opposite of an entry. The screen confirms he was wrong, so no, our thesis is not that Daemon is always right. Something narrower and much stranger is true. When the question is strategic, his reading is correct, over and over, against everyone. When the question is personal, the man is a hazard to everybody in the room, himself first. Both of those are about to matter, because the war is here. Second season. Rhaenyra holds dragons and titles and no soldiers, and everyone around her agrees on one thing. No help is coming from the Riverlands. The Riverlords are feuding children. Their liege is a dying old man, and the province, in the council's confident summary, is mud. Daemon lands at Harrenhal alone. One man, no army, a castle full of ghosts that spends the season taking him apart from the inside. We could make a whole video about what Harrenhal does to him, but keep your eye on what he does between the hauntings. He counts. His first move is a refusal, and from him it sounds almost out of character.
There are others who would sit idle and wait for their claims to be brought to them. That is not my way.
His second move is stranger, and I think it's the underrated one. He listens. The key to the Riverlands gets spoken at Harrenhal by Alice Rivers, the witch of the castle, the woman every soldier there crosses themselves about. Secure the Tully.
House Tully is not the largest house in the Riverlands, nor is it the rich.
Without him, they will never raise their banners as one.
And the river follows. Now, here's the thing about advice in this story. Kings drown in it and take none of it. Daemon takes this one from a bastard witch with no army and no name because the count was correct and he could tell. Being right, it turns out, sometimes means recognizing it in somebody else's mouth faster than anyone around you. Everything he does in that cursed castle afterward, the parts that are hard to watch included, bends toward that one borrowed calculation, and by the end of the season, the calculation is standing in a field.
We'll be ready to march in 2 days' time.
Sit, you've arrived just in time to see my new army, Groom.
Holding spears. We should sit with Harrenhal for a second longer, because the show does something clever here that's easy to miss. It hands its sharpest strategist a problem that cannot be solved by strategy. The castle shows him visions, his dead brother, his own worst memories, the crown he never let himself want out loud. Weeks of it. A different story would use that to break him. This one uses it to strip him. Every performance falls away, every audience is gone, there's nobody left in those halls to provoke. And what's left underneath, once the theater is peeled off, turns out to be a man who counts banners and holds a plan. That's the quiet joke of the whole season. The realm spent decades assuming the performance was hiding something worse. Harrenhal opens him up and finds something better. And by our rule, the confirmation has to come from the other side of the argument. It does. It comes from the queen who spent the whole season doubting him,
While you have mustered an army,
standing in front of the proof. The largest host of the war, raised out of the province, everybody wrote off. By the man, everybody wrote off. Fifth entry, and notice something about this one. For once, there's no crown to mock, no toast to quote. Nobody can reduce this to theater. There's just a field full of banners that exist because one man counted correctly while a castle was eating him alive. Between those seasons sits one short scene where the method shows at its absolute cleanest, and I didn't appreciate it on first watch. The old king dies in the night. The council in the capital crowns his son before the body is cold. Then a ship arrives at Dragonstone carrying Otto Hightower and a piece of paper.
He's offering terms.
The offer wears mercy like a coat. Keep your island, keep your titles. Your children keep their honors. Just bend the knee. And Rhaenyra's advisors start weighing it, seriously, line by line. Because that's what advisors do with paper. It takes one man at that table to refuse the premise of the entire conversation.
I would rather feed my sons to the dragons than have them carry shields and cups. For your drunken usurper cunt of a king.
One sentence, and the ceremony collapses into what it actually is, not a negotiation. A usurper's servant asking the lawful heir to notarize her own surrender. He pays for the sentence immediately. As always, the queen orders him silent in front of the whole table. And then the war he named arrives anyway, right on schedule, dragon by dragon, exactly as if the paper had never existed. Sixth entry. The shortest one, and maybe my favorite, because it all fits in a single breath. Everyone at that table read the same page. Only one of them read it out loud correctly. And there's a detail in this scene worth an extra beat. Watch Otto's face when Daemon says it. The old man doesn't flinch, doesn't argue, doesn't even pretend to be offended, because he knows it's true. He wrote the terms himself, he knows precisely what they are, and the only person in that room he cannot fool is the person the realm trusts least. There's a strange kinship in that shot. The two men who have hated each other for decades are also the only two who never lie to themselves about what's happening. The difference is which audience they perform for. Otto performs for the room and wins the room. Daemon performs for the truth and wins nothing. If you want the entire tragedy of this character in one exchange of glances across a painted table, it's here. Third season. The war has a capital now, a queen on the Iron Throne, and no money underneath her. While the court occupies itself with loyalty oaths and ceremony, the treasury walks out of the city in wagons, without a single alarm bell rung. The council learns this the way councils learn everything too late and all at once.
Your treasury is depleted.
Everybody hears that sentence. Now compare reactions, because this is the tell. The court reacts to the insult of it, the humiliation. Who to blame? One man changes his travel plans. Daemon flies to the Vale, and when the Lady of the Eyrie offers him what everybody always asks her for, soldiers, listen to what he says.
In truth, I have not come for men, I've come for gold.
There's something almost comic in it. Let's say fitting. I mean, look at the picture, the realm's most feared duelist, standing in a mountain castle, politely negotiating an invoice. The most violent man in the story, the rogue prince, the dragon in human skin, is the only person at war doing accounting. And the accounting works. The gold arrives, 10,000 dragons of it, and a court that sneered at errands has to acknowledge where it came from.
Say no more.
What small quantity of gold Daemon has found.
Grudging words said sideways, but grudging words from the other side are exactly the currency our rule trades in. An army needs bread before it needs banners, and bread costs coin. 7th entry. He was right about the money, the least glamorous thing a man can be right about, and the one that decides whether wars continue existing. So let's close the ledger and actually count, because we promised a number at the start. The city, the Stepstones, the succession, Otto, the army, the terms, the gold. 7 times across 3 seasons, the screen itself confirms that this man read the board correctly, while the room read it wrong. Against that, 2 misses, both personal, both cruel, both his own fault. We built every entry out of scenes you can rewatch tonight, and check for yourself. That was the whole point of the rule. Which leaves us the real question, the one this list has been circling since the first entry. If he was right this often, about things this large, why did being right never once save him? One more thing before the answer, because it's fair to say it plainly. Being right is not a virtue in this world. It's a tax. Every correct call this man made was collected from him in trust, in family, in years. The realm has no reward for the person who sees the board early. It only has punishments for the person who says so. Go back to where we started. A victorious commander kneels in a throne room and gives away a crown, and the court sees only theater. Now jump forward years later to a quieter room in the 3rd season. The queen proposes feeding the capital's poor. Somebody at the table waves it off as an empty gesture. And listen to who defends it.
Yes, and gestures matter.
In whose language? That's Rhaenyra. The woman who spent 2 seasons scolding him for theater is now making his argument, in his words, from his old seat at the table. Because he always knew this. The man who understood armies and money and succession also understood spectacle better than anyone in the realm, and he could never stop performing it. Every correct call came gift-wrapped in a provocation. The realm kept the wrapping and threw away the call, every single time. And the people who learned from him, the ones still standing, learned both halves without noticing where the lesson came from. He was right about the city, right about the rocks, right about the war, the vulture, the army, the paper, the gold. He was right about everything except the one thing that stood between him and being believed, himself. That last entry never made his ledger, because nobody writes that one about themselves. The show went ahead and wrote it for him. And honestly, after 3 seasons of watching the realm ignore this man into catastrophe, that feels less like irony and more like the only honest ending his story could have.